Let me ask, did you support Nelson Mandela?
I supported Nelson Mandela. Actually, I came from a very conservative family who was very against my support of the ANC and Nelson Mandela. And in my upcoming book, I actually speak about how I had the great pleasure to work with him in 1994 in crafting the ANC election strategy. And he was certainly a humanitarian who I respect a lot of people try and paint him poorly. I think he tried to do the right thing, although I think both him and the ANC gave in far too much to white interests. And I hold that view today.
But Nelson Mandela was a communist, a socialist, and the blacks who did not agree with him, he would take them and take a rubber tire, put it around their necks, and set it afire to the blacks. Were you in support of that?
That is actually incorrect, and I'm not even going to respond to that. That
Why
is absolutely
not?
incorrect.
Because that
Actually,
did happen.
if this program is ever flighted in South Africa, I think there's going to be an outcry about what you've just said, and I find that very hurtful that you would debase a man who was in prison for 27 years and was extremely kind to everybody.
But
That
he
you
was a
would
socialist. He was a communist. He wasn't kind. He was an evil man.
actually, he was an evil man.
Yes. Why
Oh,
would you
okay.
support an evil communist?
Look, I think you're probably trying to get a provocative program, and
No, I'm not. I'm
you know,
just asking questions. You said you.
I can't believe that as a religious person that you claim to be, that you would hold that belief. And Nelson Mandela wasn't a communist, actually. He was quite a liberal person, but there were certainly people within the ANC that were communists. And in fact, my personal favorite was Chris Hani, who was assassinated by a white foreigner in his driveway. And he should have been, I believe, he would have made a better president of South Africa. We are not scared of communism in South Africa.
So are you a communist?
We are not scared of. I would describe myself as a. Actually, I have a friend in the proudly in the British Communist Party. He's actually a Nigerian person living in Britain, and we were discussing the differences of communism, socialism, and I he gave me a very nice term that I'm proudly would associate with, which is I'm a revolutionary socialist because I've seen that capitalism has not served Africa well. And if you had been to Africa, which I'm not sure you have been, you would see that that capitalism has kept people in chains long after independence.
And so you would
So
call yourself a socialist, not a communist, but you're a
I'm
socialist.
extremely, yes, I believe in, if I had to say where I am on the political spectrum, I would say I'm a Pan-Africanist socialist.
That's
And I
amazing.
believe that's, and I believe that South Africa and Africa need that orientation.
So is
And
communism good or evil?
I think that the system of communism and socialism is far more human than that of capitalism, which is based on profits, not people.
It was supposed to be that way. Why is it now that apartheid has ended? Was it a mistake to end apartheid in South Africa? Because I've noticed that ever since then, black people have not been able to, and the white people gave up all the nice things in the cities to the blacks, and they moved to the farmland. And I noticed, and I've heard other black South Africans say this, that the only thing that black people have done is to make it worse. They've stolen everything. They've turned everything into a ghetto. And there are even black South Africans wanting the white man to come back because the blacks can't make it on their own. Why can't they take something that was already good and keep it going or make it better in South Africa? Why can't the black, what's wrong with them? They can't do that.
Well, I'm not sure what South Africa you're speaking
The
of,
one you
that
live
any black
in,
person, sorry,
the one that you live in.
I think clearly not, because any black South African that would speak about apartheid days being better, that's very problematic.
No, I asked you,
Because
was it a mistake to end it because the blacks have been suffering horribly since the white people left? Was it a mistake to end apartheid?
it was a mistake to give white people so much say in a new government. Nelson Mandela was too much of a good person that he forgave white people, and we have been ungrateful, and we've continued to exercise our privilege and power. That's what I would say to your question.
South Africa is a Christian country, nation, right? A Christian country, right?
You could categorize it like that. It's quite a diverse country.
Um, is it quite a what?
It's quite a diverse country
Okay.
religiously, but it's probably dominated by Christian ideology.
I get the impression that you don't seem to be bothered by the blacks going out into the white farmland and raping and killing them, breaking into their home. They had to put up electric fences around their home. They have bodyguards. They have a alarm system. They live like in prison. You don't seem to be bothered by what they're doing to the whites. Why not?
I've already answered that question, but perhaps you should get verifiable information. And I welcome you to South Africa. Perhaps you could stay with a nice white family, but we could take you as honest people from some of the more progressive organizations to see some of the truths that happen in this country, because clearly your information is highly inaccurate. And it's very problematic that I thought that once Donald Trump was so embarrassed by showing images of, I think it was Congo rather than South Africa, that Americans would stop this propaganda. But clearly it continues. I mean, it's absolutely, it's absolutely absurd, actually, what you're saying, because it bears no resemblance to what's going on in South Africa. I think what I'm going to do, there's actually a white supremacist that I often deal with on X, and I've said to him, I'm going to send him an autographed book of my autographed book on my book on white supremacy. I think I'm going to do the same, just as because clearly, and in that book, there are young black activists, ordinary South Africans, speaking about the horrors of racial oppression, and those are factual accounts. So perhaps that would be useful for you and your team to study.
What do you think about those blacks who live in South Africa who are suffering because of other blacks turning things into a ghetto and stealing and breaking into stores and homes? And they're saying to the white man, y'all need to come back. If white people was here in charge, we wouldn't have this in South Africa. What do you say to those blacks who live there and they see what the blacks are doing to destroy themselves and others? What would you say to those blacks?
Black people are not, there's instances of crime and murder and decay anywhere in the world, but the state of a black person in South Africa, in democratic South Africa, cannot compare to the horror of apartheid, the absolute horror. Their mothers, black mothers, who still don't know where their children were buried or whether they survived because they had to flee their homes in terror from the apartheid regime. There's no comparison.
So I ask you, what will you say to those blacks who live in South Africa? They know about apartheid and everything, and now that the white man have given up everything to the blacks, the situation has only gotten worse from the blacks. What do you say to those blacks who live in South Africa and they are living in those areas, in the surrounding areas, and they know how awful the blacks are, how violent they are? What do you say to those blacks?
I mean, you're speaking as if this is a fiction movie, or this is not correct what you're saying. White people have given up nothing.
You're not answering my question. I asked, what do you
No,
say to those blacks?
because
I have
because
evidence of black people complaining, and they want the white man to come back. They were saying, if white people were here, we wouldn't be having these problems. Look at the blacks. What do you say to those blacks that live there? What would you say to them?
I would say that you are indoctrinated by white supremacy and you want to be at the master's feet. And that is shocking
Yeah.
because your liberation is only possible when there's economic liberation for Black South Africans. White people occupy 70% of the land and the lion's share of the economy and control language and culture. So white people have given up nothing. That's the problem.
And so
So
those
the people
blacks
that
who
you're
are living
speaking
there,
to,
they don't know, they don't see what they see.
well, I think perhaps it would be useful for you to bring on one of those people to the conversation. I wouldn't want to know what political party they belong to, but the majority of Black South Africans certainly do not feel that way. Absolutely not.
And so are you, so you, so they know what they see happening and they calling for the white people to come back and help. You're saying that those people are delusional?
I'm saying that your information is unfortunately very incorrect. I
So,
don't know any Black people who would think that. And the white people haven't gone anywhere. White people like myself, who don't even belong on this continent, are still here
so then why don't you
enjoying
leave? If you don't belong on the continent, why don't you move away? Why do you stay?
Yes, it's a thought because I'm going to try and play a constructive role in changing the social and economic conditions for the better.
But you
And
can't do that.
sorry,
You can't change that.
no, I can change that by appealing politically to the government and to the consciousness of white people to actually give up their unearned privilege.
That's amazing. There is a all white town that's being built there in South Africa. You know about that? All white area
Yes,
for whites only. Are you?
yes, that does exist. You've stumbled across factual information at last.
I interviewed one of the founders of that area. I forgot what it's called, and
Orania.
I think that the whites in America need to do that too. They need to build areas where blacks are not allowed. They need to have their own government, their own police department, because the whites are under attack in the same way that the whites are in South Africa. Do you agree with me that the whites need to build a separate area from the blacks in America?
Well, no, I look at that. Maybe that's a good idea to have white people who are privileged, both in South Africa and America, living in an exclusive place so that the rest of society can be protected from the racism and white supremacy. In fact, on a South African, our national broadcaster, I was speaking out against Zionism, and I said that actually it was when these white Afrikaners went to America. I said what would be good is that the Zionists and the white supremacists should all form a little enclave and live together because perhaps the world would be a much better place.
But how would the blacks take care of themselves if the white people move away? The blacks don't know how to, they only know how to build ghettos. They only know how to destroy. So if you agree that the whites need to go and do their own thing, how would the blacks survive? They don't know how to survive.
Do you really believe that?
Yes, I know that.
Okay, okay.
How would the blacks survive if the whites are not there to take care of them?
Well, Black South Africans, if we had to look at history before colonialism, we would see they did very well without the white man. So I think that would be a wonderful solution. Perhaps we should, you know, do the Zionist, racist, white supremacist country. And as I said, the rest of us could live peacefully and Black culture and economy would flourish as it did in pre-colonial days.
You said that you are spiritual, right?
Yes, I am.
And what does it mean to be spiritual?
To be spiritual is to not be judgmental and to accept everyone as equal. And that is what I try and do. It's to be godly in behavior
But you don't
and
seem to
in
be that way
spirit.
about white people. You're very judgmental of white people and of the Jews. Why are you like, why are you loving the Jews and you're very judgmental of the Jews and the whites? Why is that?
It's because yes, perhaps my spirituality is geared towards humanity
No,
and
it geared
humanitarianism.
toward the blacks only.
Well, if we have to look at history, who's been treated badly, I believe that the curse is that of white supremacy, which has destroyed black culture, black lives, black wealth, black knowledge. So, yes, I will take the side of the underdog until we see justice.
And so you agree with a communist socialist pig like Nelson Mandela. You agree with the kill the Boer in South Africa. You agree with everything that seemed to be wrong. You've been traumatized as a little kid. You were traumatized by all that stuff you saw growing up. Do you realize you've been brainwashed?
Actually, I think I was very traumatized.
Right. So now you love your
No, I
enemy.
was traumatized that my own people, being Jewish and being white, could do such dreadful things to other human beings. I was traumatized. But
So
in
now
fact,
you
where
have
you
identified with the enemies because you hated what your family and other people were doing. You know how you have that syndrome thing.
actually quite
What
differently,
they call?
I
You
went
have the
against the
Stockholm.
propaganda.
You have the Stockholm syndrome.
Okay. Look, I think that
Have you noticed that
yeah,
about yourself? You have the Stockholm syndrome.
no, no, not at all. Not at all. Actually, I would worry in terms of your positionality because you seem to want to please the white man all the time. So I'm
It's
an
funny. You
honest
seem to want to please the black man, and you say I seem to want to be
no,
the white man.
no, I
What
don't.
happened
I
here?
stand I stand for justice. I actually, what I've done is I've resisted the dogma of the mainstream master narrative. And I'm proud that I've actually stood against that. It's a hard path to choose. It's based on principles and justice.
Well,
And
you
I would love it. I would love that it would connect with some kind of faith like Christianity. It hasn't for me. Perhaps in my older age, that will still happen. But I'm resolute on the course that what I stand for is humanity, whether it's in Palestine or in the Congo or in Sudan or in America.
you're
But I mean,
brainwashed.
America's based on genocide. I mean, it was based on slavery,
And you're right.
and
They are committing genocide on the whites in America. I agree with you on that. The blacks are committing genocide on the whites.